like when you are the last person to speak, or almost the last person to speak, especially after Nigerians, that was a very motivational speech by the minister from the Nigerian embassy, and of course you. Thank you very much to all the previous ministers. Yeah, I've been here since morning, and I've listened quietly. I am often at diplomatic meetings, but in a different purpose. And today it's more of culture. And since morning, all I've been hearing is diplomacy, culture, media, partnership, and so on. I will be presenting on something not totally different. Of course, we all know and hear about it. And of course, perhaps engage with in our daily day-to-day activities. Unfortunately, most of the ambassadors left. So I will still throw this question. How many of you here are mostly engaged on displacement and refugee issues in your work? Almost none. Previous work. Okay. And how many of you have much knowledge about refugee issues and displacement? Okay, we have few. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction. Like he said, originally from the Gambia, one of the very few, or if not the smallest in Africa. We're just 2.7 million, and I heard like Nigerians like 200 plus and so on. So we're just very small in West Africa. Mostly you have to say, oh, do you know Senegal? Yeah, okay, Senegal is border to Gambia. then there you can tell people where Gambia is. However, thank you very much, distinguished guests, honorable ambassadors here present. It's a pleasure to deliver a presentation here. I don't know if the center had such a collaboration with refugee organizations, but I'm very much honored to be part of this. So I'll be speaking on from dialogue to co-designing, building a bridge between African diplomacy and refugee leadership in cultural diplomacy. My presentation would actually explore moving from dialogue to co-design for stronger relationship between diplomats and refugees. So that is the logo of the Refugee Advisory Board of Germany. So it is Europe's first national advisory board that was established officially last year. My presentation would actually focus on the work of the advisory board and how do we form partnership with diplomats. So next slide, the Refugee Advisory Board was established to actually ensure that national and international decision-making is informed by perspectives and expertise of forcefully displaced persons who actually provide critical feedback on national and international issues and programs. The GERAP is initiated by RSEED. This is Refugees Seeking Equal Access at the Table, an international initiative based in Canada, working to enhance the effectiveness of global refugee response by co-designing mechanisms to amplify refugee leadership ecosystem and increase participation of refugees at levels in meaningful, sustainable, and transformative way. The initiative started as a pilot project in 2021, where a refugee that happens to be myself accompanied the German government at the high-level official meeting in Geneva for the first time. And it was officially established in 2024, last year. So some of the key points that we do is we don't just want to be seen as refugees. So any person that is displaced or that left his or her country, either as a displaced person, as a refugee, or as an immigrant, has a reason. Unfortunately, most people from Africa are termed as economic immigrant or economic asylum seekers, and this is why most refugees have challenges in terms of being accorded refugee status. Personally, I had to leave my country because of my work as a journalist. In 2015, we had a 23 years of dictatorship. If you know the Gambia and you know the former government who served for 23 years as a brutal dictator, media was censored, and for women, media is a no-go area. So 2/3 of the journalist fraternity actually either had to flee, been in prison, or lose their life. And I was fortunately one of those that actually safely flew to Germany with an international protection. So, as I said, we as refugees, we are actually advocating for equal partnership in political discussion making. This is one of the reasons why we have the advisory board formed as the first pioneering body in Europe, and Germany happens to be the host. We all know how important Germany is in the issue of refugee discussion and how welcoming it used to be, let's say in 2015, when the former chancellor has this open policy door and says refugees are welcome, they are part of us. And this is where the refugee influx, especially from Syria and some other from the horns of Africa, actually arrived. But now it's a different discussion. However, this is why the issue of fostering dialogue with diplomats in political discussions, the board was formed. Is a so-called board that actually advises the government on issues, political issues, on decisions, because usually decisions are made for refugees without them. Usually policies are made and that's it. So you either have to go by it or it's your problem. So the board is here to say, look, we are okay if you make policies and make decisions on our behalf, but we'll be very happy to decide this with you. Not decide this with you perhaps, but to accompany you and advise you, because as the Englishman says, he who lives it knows it and can actually explain it better. So we are happy that the German government has listened to us and is really working with us, listening to us, advising them on, how to draft these policies and make decisions on our behalf, at least with our opinions and advice. So like I said, we have both national and international engagement, and on the international engagement, the members join the German delegation on international issues on refugee discussions, especially at the UNHCR, United Nations High Commission of Refugees, on their various meetings, including the executive committee, that's the EXCOM meetings, where you have government delegates worldwide meet in Geneva to discuss on displacement and refugee issues. And also meetings like the annual tripartite consultation on resettlement, ATCR, and the high-level official meeting, and so on. So the advisory policy impact that the board has is actually to provide guidance to government and non-government actors on refugee policy, influence both national and transnational decision-making. We also publish policy briefs to inform and support policymakers, like I said, advocate for stronger refugee representation in all relevant forums. The board, like I said, is a so-called informal board. It's actually coordinated by a secretariat based in Bonn. That is the Bonn International Center for Conflict Studies. This is where the board is actually as a secretariat. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Yeah, like I said, the secretariat is actually based in Bonn by the Bonn International Center for Conflict Studies. The board actually consists of 6 people with displacement and refugee backgrounds from law. I mean, those are refugees that were already established, I would say, in their countries before moving to Germany. Personally, I've worked as a journalist for over 5 years in my country before moving to Germany. And I have other colleagues that have legal background, that have worked as lawyers and even international lawyers, health experts, psychologists, educationists, researchers, and so on. So currently we are 6, and we intend to expand to 12, perhaps by September. It's a 2-term. Already almost 1 is gone. So our partners are government, civil service, NGOs, and of course the refugee community. Currently, we are supported by the Robert Bosch Foundation and alternatively BMZ that we are currently in consultation with. Our partners include the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, the Auswärtiges Amt, that is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Interior, the Ombudsman, Federal Ministry for Migration and Refugees, UNHCR Berlin, and of course, our seat as the pioneer. We are GERAP advocate for transparent, inclusive governance, ensuring that refugee voices are represented in policy making at all levels. It actively contributes to solutions for major refugee-related challenges in Europe. Now, I'll also look at the current refugee challenges in Europe and what exactly is the role of the board in addressing these issues. So some of the focus areas that we have, because it's new and we're still in the founding phase, we're currently looking at integration and economic development and governance reforms. So the barriers that we have on economic integration for refugees is language and cultural barriers, non-recognition of qualification, limited job access, especially for women. So usually, like I said, refugees that arrive here are just termed as beneficiaries or economic refugees that with the thought of do not have qualification, but this is not really the case. And most that are affected is actually African migrants. So in the board, we are 2 Africans that are really advocating for the flight of Africans, because then we have this direct access to government. So the refugee crisis in Africa, a complex reality, forced displacement. Why do African refugees flee? I mean, we all know it's either it has to do with wars, persecutions, based on religion, gender, and so on, or climate change that is actually triggering mass refugee flows from Africa, especially the horns of Africa. I've already mentioned a bit about the challenges. However, you have access to integration and language costs. This is something that many refugees face that deter them not to be able to access issues like job market, education. The issue of racism and discrimination is also a huge topic in Germany, and especially if you are a refugee, it actually termed as you are not qualified again. So that was our first in-person meeting in October 2024 at the Robert Bosch Foundation, also during the annual UNHCR meeting on resettlement, meeting with several German government officials. So what we propose, concrete next steps, how do we work together? We intend to co-design principles, focus on active participation, empowerment, and mutual dialogue, not just, having us to fill in places as it is usually the norm. This could bring a lot of co-design benefits, like create meaningful policy dialogue and sustainable solution. We actually wanted to do away with tokenistic approach, where, like I said, teachers to have us fill the spaces. But then I think Germany is actually taking a step. I think it's the 6th country across the world that actually now agreed to have this official board advise them. You have one in US, Canada, New Zealand, and now Germany. And I think in Africa and Kenya, they are also working on it. So building a bridge, strategies for effective co-design. So like I already said, you include us in your engagement projects, conferences, and so on. The 2024-2026 is our mandate. Resource mobilization is really interesting. Somebody spoke of funding. This is something that actually help not just refugees, but everyone to be able to do their work. Of course, challenges. And before I go to the challenges, I just want to point out few examples on refugees. Personally, I have a media background, and I just returned from the Gambia 2 days ago, empowering 280 women into media and information literacy across the whole country. For the first time, this is happening in the Gambia. We also published a media guide, and the first time a National Women in Media Conference, and I'm also doing the same in Berlin. And you have so many people with refugee background that are really empowering others, not just in Germany, but going back to their countries. So I think if we work together, we will be able to empower more, not just refugees, but back home as well. So of course the challenges, I think my time is finished. However, I would like to say thank you very much. Hopefully, we will see us at some point again.